I want you to think about one day, one specific day in your life, a day when you looked at yourself in the mirror and you didn't recognize the person staring back at you. A day when you felt so far behind, so lost, so completely overwhelmed by everything you had not done, everything you had not become, everything that had slipped through your fingers while you were busy being busy. Do you have that day in mind? Good. Hold on to it. Hold on to it. Because before this night is over, that day is going to mean something completely different to you than it does right now. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I'm about to say to you. What matters is that somewhere in this room, somewhere watching this right now, there is a person who has been spending their time, their most precious, most irreplaceable, most non-renewable resource, on things that are slowly, quietly, invisibly stealing their future from them. They don't even know it. Or worse, they do know it, and they just can't stop. That was me. I need to tell you about a Tuesday. It was a Tuesday in October. 7 years ago, I was sitting in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled like old takeout and broken promises. My phone had 17 unread messages from people I owed money to. My laptop was open to a job application I had started 4 times and never finished. The television was on, some show I wasn't even watching. Just the noise to fill the silence, because the silence was too loud. You understand what I mean? The silence was too loud because in the silence I had to hear myself think. And when I heard myself think, all I heard was, "You're wasting your life." That was 2:47 in the afternoon. I had been awake since noon and I had done nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not one single thing that mattered. Not one step toward anything I actually said I wanted. And here's the thing that haunts me about that Tuesday. The thing that still wakes me up at night sometimes. It wasn't the first Tuesday like that. It wasn't the 10th. It wasn't the 10th. It wasn't even the 50th. That Tuesday was one of hundreds. Hundreds of days where I woke up with good intentions and went to bed with excuses. Hundreds of days where I told myself tomorrow I'll start. Hundreds of days where I chose comfort over commitment, distraction over direction, the easy thing over the right thing. The easy thing over the right thing. And on that particular Tuesday in October, something cracked open inside me. Not in a dramatic way. Not like the movies where the music swells and the light hits you just right and suddenly you're a changed man. No, it cracked open quietly. Like a hairline fracture in a wall you've been ignoring for years. I picked up my phone, not to scroll, not to text someone, not to watch a video. I picked up my phone and I opened the calculator app. And I did some math that broke my heart. I was 31 years old. I had on average, if I was lucky, maybe 50 more years of life ahead of me. 50 years. That sounds like a lot, right? That sounds like plenty of time. But then I kept going with the math. 50 years. If I sleep 8 hours a night, and I was sleeping way more than that, let me tell you, but let's say 8 hours. That's 16 waking hours a day. 50 years times 365 days is 18,250 days times 16 hours. That's 292,000 hours of conscious breathing, decision-making life left in me. 292,000 hours. It sounds enormous. And then I asked myself, how many of those hours in the past year alone had I spent doing something that actually moved my life forward? Something intentional, something aligned with who I said I wanted to be? And I couldn't answer. I literally could not come up with an honest answer. And that silence, that is the moment this speech was born. Right there, on a Tuesday afternoon in a messy apartment, with 17 unread messages and a television show I wasn't watching. Because I realized something in that moment. I realized that time is not just money. That phrase, time is money, is one of the most dangerous half-truths ever spoken. Because money you can earn more of, money you can borrow, money someone can give you. But time doesn't care how hard you cry. Time doesn't give extensions. Time doesn't have a customer service line you can call. Time moves. It moves whether you're ready or not. It moves whether you're watching or not. It moves whether you're using it or wasting it. And the terrifying part? You will never know. You will never know exactly how much of it you have left. So the real question, the question underneath all the other questions is not, how do I make more money? Or how do I find more success? Or even, how do I be happy? The real question is, what am I doing with the time I have been given? And I'm not asking that as a guilt trip. I'm not standing here to make you feel bad. I'm asking that because I genuinely, deeply, with everything in me believe that most people are not lazy, most people are not stupid, most people are not incapable of greatness. Most people are simply confused. They are confused. They are confused about where their time is going. They are confused about why. Despite being busy every single day, they feel like they're getting nowhere. They're confused about the gap between the life they imagined and the life they're actually living. And today I want to close that gap, not with a system, not with a hack, not with a 5-step productivity plan you'll forget by next Tuesday. I want to close that gap with truth, with stories, with the kind of conversation that changes the way you see everything. So let's start at the beginning. Start with what time actually is. Most of us, and I include myself in this, most of us think about time the wrong way. We think about time as something that exists outside of us, something we either have or don't have. I don't have time for that. I'll do it when I have more time. If only I have more time. If only I had more time. As if time is a thing that exists somewhere in the universe and some people got handed more of it than others. But time is not something you have or don't have. Time is something you choose or don't choose. Every single moment of every single day, you are making a choice about where your time goes. And I know some of you are already raising your hand in your mind going, but I don't have a choice. I have to go to work. I have bills. I have kids. I have responsibilities. And yes, you do. And I'm not here to minimize any of that. But here's what I want you to understand. Even within the constraints of your real life, there is more discretionary time than you think. And more importantly, it's not just about the blocks of time that are obviously free. It's about the quality and the intention behind all of your time. Even the time you spend on obligations. Let me tell you about a woman named Maria who was 43 years old. She worked 2 jobs, a cashier during the day, a cleaning shift at a hotel 3 nights a week. She had 2 kids in middle school. She was supporting her mother who had health issues. She had $400 in her bank account and $23,000 in debt. By any reasonable measurement, Maria had no. Maria's plate was not just full, Maria's plate was overflowing, and somebody had stacked another plate on top of it. And yet, Maria wanted to be a nurse. She had wanted to be a nurse since she was a little girl watching her grandmother take care of sick neighbors in their community. Nursing was her dream, but she'd never pursued it because how could she? When would she study? When would she go to class? How would she pay for it? She had looked at that dream for 20 years, the same way someone looks at a painting in a museum. Beautiful, belonging to someone else, permanently behind glass. One day, Maria's daughter said something to her that changed everything. Her daughter was 12 years old, doing homework at the kitchen table, and Maria was rushing around trying to get dinner ready before her night shift. And her daughter looked up and said, "Mom, do you ever just do something you actually want to do?" Maria said it was like being punched in the chest. She didn't respond. She just stood there at the stove. And that night, during her cleaning shift at the hotel, pushing a mop cart down a quiet hallway at 1 in the morning, Maria started doing math in her head. She started actually counting her hours. And she discovered that between her lunch breaks at work, the 45 minutes she spent watching TV before bed each night, and 2 hours on Sunday mornings, she usually just spent sitting with her coffee. She had, realistically, somewhere between 8 and 10 hours per week of time that was not already spoken for. 8 to 10 hours per week. She enrolled in an online nursing prerequisite course that started at $150. She took it over her lunch breaks on her phone. She studied those Sunday mornings instead of sitting with her coffee. Well, she kept the coffee. She just opened a textbook with it. She gave up the TV before bed and replaced it with 30 minutes of study and then sleep. Within 18 months, she had completed enough prerequisites to apply to an accelerated nursing program with a scholarship. But Maria is a nurse today, not because she found more time, but because she looked differently at the time she already had. Now, I'm not telling you Maria's story to make you feel like you have no excuses. I hate that phrase, no excuses. It's dismissive. Life is hard. Constraints are real. I'm telling you Maria's story because I want you to see that time is elastic. It stretches or shrinks based on what you decide matters. And when you decide something truly matters, when you stop putting your dreams behind glass and start treating them like necessities, time shows up in the most unexpected places. But here's where it gets harder. Here's where I have to say something that some of you won't want to hear. It's not just about finding time. It's about being honest about where your time is already going. Let me ask you something. And I want you to answer this honestly in your heart right now. How many hours a day do you spend on your phone? Not working, not communicating anything meaningful, just scrolling, just consuming, just existing inside a feed that someone else built to capture your attention and sell it to advertisers. The average person right now spends between 3 and 5 hours a day on their phone for non-productive use. 3 to 5 hours per day. That is, are you ready for this? That is between 21 and 35 hours per week. That is essentially a part-time job. That is the equivalent of learning a language, learning an instrument, building a business, writing a book, getting fit, studying for a certification, mentoring someone, creating something. And I'm not saying screens are evil. I'm not saying social media is the devil. I'm saying you get to choose. You get to decide whether those 3 to 5 hours belong to someone else's agenda or to your own. And most people have handed that decision over by default. They haven't consciously said, I choose to give my time to this. They've just fallen in, like someone falling into a river and going wherever the current takes them, wondering why they never reach the shore they wanted. I want to tell you about a man I read about. His name was Demosthenes, ancient Greece. If you know anything about ancient history, you might know that Demosthenes became one of the greatest orators, one of the greatest speakers in human history. His speeches shaped nations. His words moved armies. His rhetoric is still studied today, thousands of years later. But here's what most people don't know about Demosthenes. He started with a stutter, a genuine, debilitating stutter. He was laughed out of the first courtroom he ever tried to speak in. People mocked him openly. His voice was weak. His delivery was a disaster. He went home that day humiliated. And what did he do? He could have quit. He could have found something else to do with his time. He could have spent his days in bitterness, telling people about the unfairness of having a stutter when you want to be a great speaker instead. And this is the part that gets me every single time. Instead, Demosthenes went to the beach. Every morning, he would put pebbles in his mouth and practice speaking. He would train his voice against the sound of the crashing waves. He would recite passages while running uphill to build his lung capacity. He would practice in front of a mirror. Every single day. He was not born great. He built greatness. With time, with deliberate, intentional daily use of his time. And here's the thing about Demosthenes that I want you to really sit with. The world did not give him extra hours. He had the same 24 hours as the people who laughed at him. He had the same 24 hours as every other person in ancient Athens. But he consciously, deliberately chose to put those hours toward mastery, toward the thing that called him, toward the version of himself that didn't exist yet. That is the secret. That has always been the secret. It is not mysterious. It is not complicated. It is simply choose your time before someone else chooses it for you. Now let's talk about something that I think is one of the most misunderstood ideas in the entire conversation about time and success. Busyness. We live in a culture that has made busyness a virtue. We wear busyness like a badge of honor. How are you? Oh, I'm so busy. And there's this unspoken assumption that busy equals productive. That if you're busy, you must be going somewhere. You must be building something. You must be on your way. But busyness and progress are not the same thing. They are not even close to the same thing. And confusing them is one of the most heartbreaking mistakes I see people make with their lives. Imagine a hamster on a wheel. That hamster is busy. That hamster is moving its legs at full speed. That hamster is putting in the effort. And that hamster is going absolutely nowhere. It is generating heat and exhaustion without generating motion in any meaningful direction. That is what a lot of us are doing. We are generating heat. We are busy all day long. We are exhausted every night. But when we look back at the end of the week or the end of the year, the needle hasn't moved. We're in the same place or close to it. And we don't understand why. Because we've been so busy, the question is never, how busy are you? The question is, busy doing what? Busy moving toward what? Busy in service of what vision, what goal, what version of your future self? If you can't answer that question clearly, and I mean clearly specifically, with actual words and actual metrics, then your busyness is not an asset. It is a disguise. It is busyness as avoidance. Because sometimes staying busy is the most sophisticated form of procrastination there is. Because you can be busy and still never do the one thing that actually scares you, the one thing that actually matters, the one call you need to make, the one idea you need to pursue, the one conversation you need to have, the one project you've been talking about for 3 years. Busy is safe. Busy lets you feel like you're trying without actually risking anything. Real, meaningful use of time requires something different. It requires clarity, it requires courage. It requires courage. And it requires what I call productive discomfort. The willingness to spend your time on things that are hard, uncertain, and uncomfortable. Because those are the things that actually change your life. Let me tell you about a writer named Stephen King. Before Stephen King was Stephen King, before he was the best-selling author of over 60 novels, before Carrie and the Shining, and before all of it, he was a high school English teacher living in a trailer with his wife and 2 kids. They were broke. They didn't have a phone because they couldn't afford to pay the bill. His wife Tabitha was working at a Dunkin' Donuts. They were surviving barely. And every single night after working all day at school and coming home to a family that needed him, Stephen King would sit down at a small desk in the laundry room because that was the only quiet space in the trailer. He'd set up a board across the washer and dryer, put a typewriter on it, and he would write. Not for hours, sometimes just for 45 minutes, sometimes just for a page or two, but every night, consistently, relentlessly, using the time he had, not the time he wished he had. And one of those nights in that laundry room, he started a story about a girl named Carrie. He didn't think it was any good. He actually threw the first pages in the trash. His wife pulled them out, read them, and told him to keep going. He kept going. Carrie sold for $400,000. And that was in 1973. The rest, as they say, is history. But here's what I want you to notice. Stephen King did not wait for a big block of uninterrupted time. He did not wait until the trailer was bigger, until the kids were older, until the job was less demanding. He worked in the margins. He used the scraps of time that other people would have called not enough. And he stacked those scraps night after night until they became something extraordinary. There is always time in the margins. The question is whether you choose to use it or whether you spend it consuming other people's dreams. Now I want to shift gears for a moment because there's a piece of this conversation that doesn't get talked about enough. And it is the piece that I think causes the most suffering. And that piece is this: how you spend your time is a reflection of what you actually value. Not what you say you value. What you actually value. We all have a story we tell about ourselves. A narrative. I value my health. I value my family. I value my growth. I value my faith. I value my dreams. And those stories feel real, feel true. Because we mean them when we say them. In the moment, we genuinely believe them. But then we look at the scoreboard. The scoreboard doesn't lie. The scoreboard doesn't lie. The scoreboard is your calendar. The scoreboard is your bank statement. The scoreboard is your body. The scoreboard is the actual factual record of where your hours went. And when you hold up what you say you value against the scoreboard of how you actually spent your time, that's where the reckoning happens. I had a friend, a good friend, one of my closest, and he used to tell me all the time how much he valued his relationship with his daughter. He'd talk about it with so much love and conviction. And then one day, his daughter, she was about 8 or 9 at the time, she made him a birthday card. And on the front of the card, she drew a picture. And the picture was of a man sitting at a laptop. And she had written underneath it in crayon, "This is my daddy. He is always working. He called me crying at 11 o'clock at night. He said she doesn't see me as a dad. She sees me as a man who works." And I asked him, carefully because he was my friend and I loved him, I asked him, "How many hours a week do you actually spend present with her? Not in the house, present, engaged, on the floor, playing, doing homework, just being with her." He was quiet for a long time and then he said, "Not enough. That's the scoreboard, and here's the thing. And I want to be very careful and compassionate here. This is not about judgment. This is not about being a bad person." My friend was not a bad person. He was a hardworking person who had confused effort with presence. He thought working hard for his family was the same as being with his family. And those are not the same thing. They are similar in intention and completely different impact. And the question that changed his life, and I want to offer it to you now, is this. If the way I spend my time is a vote for my values, then what am I voting for? And is that what I actually want my life to stand for? Not because every hour you spend is a vote. Every morning you get up and decide what to do first. That's a vote. Every night you decide whether to scroll or to sleep or to read or to create. That's a vote. Every lunch break, every weekend, I'll just watch one more episode, those are votes. And at the end of your life, when all the votes are counted, the tally will be the answer to the question. What did this person truly value? I want to spend your votes well today. So let me give you some real, concrete, life-altering things that the people I most admire have in common about how they use their time. The first thing is this. They protect their mornings like their lives depend on it because their lives do depend on it. Think about what happens to most people in the morning. The alarm goes off, and before both feet are even on the floor, before the day has even begun, most people have already handed the first moments of their consciousness to someone else. They grab the phone. They check messages. They scroll the news. They dip their mind into the thoughts of other people, the demands of other people, the drama of other people. And just like that, the freshest, clearest, most creative, most focused hours of the day have been given away without a fight, without even realizing it. The morning is sacred. The morning is when your willpower is at its highest. The morning is when the noise of the world hasn't yet reached full volume. The morning is when you have the best chance of being the author of your day instead of a character in someone else's story. I want to tell you about something that Toni Morrison said. And if you don't know who Toni Morrison is, she is one of the greatest American writers who ever lived, Nobel Prize winner, Pulitzer Prize winner, someone whose words have touched millions of lives. Toni Morrison wrote most of her early books while working full-time as an editor at Random House and raising 2 sons alone as a single mother. And someone once asked her, How did you do all of that? And she said something that I have never forgotten. She said she discovered she could wake up a little before the children, make herself a cup of coffee, and sit with the rising light, and that those minutes before the house woke up were where her writing lived. She said once she understood that, once she protected that morning time as truly hers, everything changed. Toni Morrison did not have a secret. She did not have a superpower. She had a commitment to a certain kind of morning.